So let's talk about POJO and Java Bean, and Spring Beans. Okay, so POJO is a plain old Java object. So it means that it's just a plain Java object with no extension, meaning inheritance, and no implementation of interface, and no annotations. So no extension, no implementation, no annotation. It doesn't depend on anything else. Just plain old Java object. That is POJO. There's some exception for annotation in Wikipedia, but I won't go that much detail. So yeah, that is POJO, and Java Bean is just another extension of POJO. It's quite similar to POJO, but it has more rules. So the first rule is it has no arguments constructor. You have to include that. And another rule is they have to include private properties, and another one is simple public getter setter methods. And another final rule is they have to be serializable. Okay, serializable. So there is one thing that is breaking the POJO rule here, that is serializable. To become a serializable, that class have to implement an serializable interface. In Wikipedia, it says that since serializable interface is a methodless interface, that means there is no method, it's just an empty interface. It doesn't make that much difference, but still most people and classes say that it breaks the POJO rules. So to summarize, POJO is just a plain old Java object with no extension, no implementation, no annotation. But Java Bean is has like more rules, like no arguments constructor, private properties, and public getter setters, and they have to be serializable. So what you can see here is that there's no such keywords or like POJO or Java Bean in Java language. They are just concepts. They are just rules. When these rules apply to a Java object, that is a POJO. When these rules apply to a Java object, that is Java Bean. So what I'm trying to say is they are just concepts. They're not like keywords or like real objects. They are just concepts. So that is, and the Spring Bean is a little bit different. Spring Bean is also a concept, but you have to actually put in Bean annotation and component and things like that in Spring. So yeah, I don't fully understand this concept like 100%, but I'm going to explain it the way I understand them right now. So before talking about Spring Bean, we have to talk about the life cycle of the objects. So when you create object, they have life cycle, of course. So you have to instantiate them, and then this object will do some kind of functions or something. They'll do something, and later when their jobs are done, they will be destroyed. So this is their life cycle, you know. So so when you program an application, you have to manage these life cycles. You have to like instantiate them. You have to give them a function to do, and when it is finished, you have to destroy them. So that is with normal object. But when you say Spring Beans, they're still objects, but they are no longer controlled by you. Their life cycle is not controlled by you anymore. They are controlled by Spring. So that's why Spring have IOC, like version of control containers. In IOC, they have Spring Beans. That are literally mean there are objects or components that IOC will manage their life cycles. Okay, so I will simplify it into like examples. Let's say when you create an application, uh, you create objects to do things, right? And you know what to do with these objects. You instantiate them, function them, just try and you do that. But when you use frameworks like Spring, they act more like a rubber, you know, rubber. Uh, for example, like Spring have Spring Web and Spring Boot, and they have uh, Tomcat server and so many things, you know. And they also have JPA for data access and database, something like that, data, something like that. So when you are building an application, you don't want to rewrite them, reinvent the wheel. So you don't want to rewrite these again. So you use framework like Spring. So Spring have these, and they are inside Spring. So when you start the Spring framework, so start the Spring application, this will start running, right? So these will start running. So they will have their own objects and methods and classes and something like that. There are processes that will happen. So when you write an application, you have to use these objects inside your application. So you have to pull these objects into your application, and you have to implement them. So these Spring objects and your objects will work together. So when you control the life cycle of your objects by yourself, it will make Spring a little bit hard to control the application, because most main objects will come from Spring. So instead of controlling the life cycle of the object by yourself, you give the management, the management role to the Spring. So your objects will become beans and components, and Spring will control them. Okay, I have another example. This is just the way I understand it. I'm not 100% sure about it. The way I see it is, let's say you have a startup company, and you have a developer named John, and you create an application. John do all the job, like front and back and everything he do it. So you understand John, John, and you can manage John everything. You know him well. But when your application is really blow up, and every big company wants to buy you, and finally you sell it to, let's say, Google. You sell it to Google. So now Google own your application, and they want to expand it. They want to make the software bigger. So they hire two of the best Google developers. They are, let's say, Fu and Bar. Okay, the Fu is security, cyber security guy. He's good with security, and Bar is good with databases. So they're really good. They are they are Google developers, so yeah, they are 10x programmers, and you cannot control them. You cannot manage them, because they're really out of your management capacity. They're really good, and so, but you need to use them in your application, right? So when you're trying to use these Foo and Bar, and you cannot control them, but you need them to use it. So instead of controlling their life cycles, like what project they have to do, how they do it, like things like that, you don't know how to control them. You can only know how to control John. So instead of controlling their life cycle, you give that control controller, yeah, you that permission to Google, right? So like these food and bars, they become sprint beans, and Google will control the life cycle, and they will work in both Google and your startup project. So they work really well. Yeah, that's how I understand it.